Hi, Megha.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So today we have Megha Bradley. Today she's going to be talking to us about the soul prints in your hands, discovering the key to your life purpose. So this is about like palm readings, everybody. I'm so excited. This is really cool. She really taught me a lot when she did a session with me years ago. Honestly, I'll never forget when she said to me, Sheri, you're an artist. You're a suppressed artist. Why are you not doing your art? I'm like, who the hell knows that? Who knows that? There's art in my hands. I'm like, where does it say art? She goes, well, that's connected to your money line, and there's a disconnect. If you would do your art, you'd make some money. I'm like, Jesus. And I'll never forget that. Honestly, this day, I'll never forget that. So today, hopefully you guys are going to learn something that will be life-changing because she's awesome. She does human design. She did, so like, what do you call it? Soul prints?
Oh, well, yeah, the soul imprint session is the one that I do with the hands, and I do theta healing. Yeah.
The key thing that you do?
What was that?
The one that you did with me last week, the key, the unlocking.
Oh, the gene keys. Yeah, it's an extension of sort of along the lines of the human design. I use them together.
It's so cool. She's so fascinating. Let me tell you, I admire her. She's a great mother of 2 children, and she's a great writer. She's a great coach, and she has so many great offerings. Her passion is to help people transform their subconscious limitations and conditionings and their frustrating patterns to help them stop feeling short of realizing their love, abundance, and success that they were born to have. What she does is she combines everything from theta healing, hand analysis, human design, these key code readings, which is fascinating. She has a deep knowledge of spiritual laws and human biometrics and psychology. She also does, she's a passion coach, I believe you just got certified in, right?
The passion test, yes.
Passion test. So she can really figure out who you are, where you're going, where you came from, you know, what you can do, and how you can live in your life purpose. She also had major trauma in her life. She died and came back. She had an accident that she should have died, and literally a near-death experience in 2014. All right, let's come back to center.
Yeah, well, let me bring you all back to center. Yes, I'm sure we are being hacked into. I'll go ahead and start. So, I actually am going to preface the start of this to actually, since that's what showed up, address it. Also, my dog is in the room, so if she jumps up and kisses me, there's a big black labradoodle suddenly appears in the screen.
Beautiful. That's okay.
Anticipated.
My cat shows too. That's great.
Yeah.
So, poor girl, go for it.
So, obviously, I think that that little opportunity that came to us to notice the awareness of how many times and places in our existence that things will try to show up to interfere in our life. And ultimately, it is our job to stay completely aligned and centered, tuned into who we are, what our purpose is, what our design is, and to recognize that at this time, especially, I'm not talking about this so much in the world of transformation, but we are, one of the things, and I'm actually going to kind of go down a rabbit hole for a minute, Sheri, so just ride with me here. I'm actually going to go down a rabbit hole for a minute. What was that? Is that here an echo? Echo? That is so strange. I keep hearing myself. So strange. I keep in a different voice. Okay, maybe it's gone now. So what about 2 years ago, I was actually brought forth with some information from the angelic realm and guidance that really I didn't want to pay attention to it. And what it ultimately was a warning of how important it is right now for us to tune to our soul purpose and our divine alignment of who we are, because ultimately there is a lot of spiritual interference that is not of the affirmative and the positive. And that little example visiting us a second ago is an example of that, and it comes in various forms. And ultimately, the work that I do came as a result of me reaching a crossroads. I had a near-death experience, and I decided at the time that even though I'd been a healer for a lot of years and I had sort of run from it, many of us run from our gifts. We run from the thing that we know is actually our truth. We run from the opportunities that should come to us. And ultimately, we will avoid being in the highest and best alignment of ourselves. And as a result of that, we often struggle financially, we'll struggle in our relationships. And if we are to come to understand that within our DNA is a blueprint, now obviously that's not to take away free will, individuality, or creative choice, but there is a master path that we are each designed to live in the most powerful and inspired way with the greatest ease. And if we can line up with that, if we can move ourselves away from the conditioning of the collective and into the alignment of the divine, then we have the power and potential to create at mass levels of bliss, joy, and ease. And oftentimes that's why if you look at the personal development industry, that's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And it's because there's something always wrong. The work that I do with hand analysis is something that is not, we're not predictive. People come up to me. I intentionally did not learn palmistry because I don't want to know it in the work that I do. Hand analysis is like a third cousin to palmistry. We use the lines in the hands, and I'll talk a bit about that here in a few minutes with the time that I have. But we also use the fingerprints. Now, of course, every single human being on this planet has a different configuration of their fingerprints. 7 billion people, or approximately thereabouts. Nobody has exactly the same design frequency of their fingerprints. And the theory that sort of was chased when this science was created was, what if every single fingerprint set is a soul print and a signature of these individual divine expressions of the creative being? And that is how I see each of us. And that means that what I may see in someone else and judge it as not okay, or it doesn't match up with me, is me living in the separateness from the understanding that they are uniquely and divinely created, and so am I. And so if you've been raised in a childhood, and I was raised with a very traumatic childhood, with parents who berated and ultimately abused me, and many times I went through the entire course of my life into my adult years with this context of what's wrong with me. Now, I don't know if any of you can relate with that, but I'm sure all you got to do is go out and scroll Facebook for 5 minutes and you'll find 5 judgments about every other thing about you that isn't right and okay. And it is being amplified right now because I think of this pressure to align with the divine energy within. Therefore, the science of human design came through over 35,000 sets of handprints being studied and validated. And he ultimately went to through neuroscience. His name is Richard Rudd, if any of you are interested. And he was the person who really created the science and the school. And ultimately, I went to school for over 15 months to learn how to do this, as well as the human design and everything else. And I was trained to combine human design and hand analysis. I spoke a couple weeks ago about the human design. And ultimately what happens is that in these fingerprints, we have a soul purpose. The soul purpose, which is unchanging the numerical count of each fingertip. I take a handprint when I do this, and I ship these all over the world. I ship a handprint kit, and the person puts their handprint on this sheet of paper, and then I'm able to do just like a forensics expert would do, and look at those fingertips and come up with the highest frequency vibration in which hand. And as Sheri had mentioned, be able to see where life purpose is, the highest potential frequency for that individual, where it lives, which finger. And so a little bit of tidbit. So this is some fun for you as you look at your hands. So I like to be, I won't go too far into every single nuance, and you can come to my room and visit me, and that's where I'll be giving away my raffle prize. But if you look at your hands you will notice that you notice how my pinky finger is further than, like, it's not equally distributed from my ring finger. See that? So if you look at your hands and notice if any of your fingers sort of stick together or come apart, they're attracted to one energy or the other, or they're repelled from a different energy. So very quickly going through this, your thumb is your will. And how flexible your thumb is depends, it will reflect how flexible you are in your thinking. People with sort of stubby, rigid thumbs are not highly flexible thinkers. And so if you try to get into a yeah.
No comment.
And so as a result, if you happen to know that about yourself, it's like owning it. Like, tell people, you know what, don't try to get into it with me. I am fixed in my thinking. Or like me, I have a very like jello-y thumb. I could go every which way in every which direction. And if you look at my human design, I have an open crown. So these things tie together energetically. So the thumb is the will. The pointer finger is ruled by Jupiter. So it's Jupiterian energy. And I am not an astrology expert, so this is not my realm of expertise, but Jupiterian energy is sort of like pointing and shaking your finger at people, right? You should do that. Go over there and do that. It's sort of bossiness energy, if you will. And then there is middle finger, Saturn. And Saturn is about responsibility. It's about systems and structures and keeping things organized and making sure there's money in the bank and all those things that, you know, basically help life run like it's supposed to. And then we get to the ring finger. The ring finger is about, it's Apollo energy. Apollo is really the arts and creativity and self-expression through physical form. It could be dance. It could be anything that's some form of art, if you will. Sometimes it could be functional art. And it could be digging in the dirt and creating some sort of masterpiece or clay or whatever. So it's not just fine art or high art. And then there's the pinky finger, which is Mercury. I'll wait for a second. And Mercury is about communication. So those of you who are writers, or I'll give you the little tell sign here. So my Mercury is further away from it's not evenly distributed from my Apollo. So there's a couple of different things that could go on here, but oftentimes it means that I have a sort of a separatist communication style, or I'll keep things to myself, or I don't necessarily conform or communicate in the same way that everybody else does. So there's things that you can tell just by looking at the hands. Very simply, and today I'm doing, if you drop by, I'll tell you about your heart line. But your heart line talks about, it reflects your emotion, how you digest emotion in relationship to other people's energy. There's the headline, which if it's a very straight and short headline, you make very decisive and quick ways of looking at things. If you have a headline that's forked, this is your headline. This is that line there. If it's forked and it kind of has two ends to it, it means you see things two separate ways. And so I can tell from someone how flexible they are in their thinking between just the thumb and the headline.
And can you hold it up a little bit closer so we can, there we go. Yeah.
This is a headline.
Got it.
And while I'm pointing out things, see how there's a gap between the headline? Many of you will have a headline that joins to the lifeline. This is the lifeline.
Okay.
And if your headline is independent like that, it means that you've broken away from the collective agreements and conversations that are really running your family. You're probably a bit of an outsider to your family. I am clearly completely outsider from my family.
No matter what hand it is, left or right?
Well, the non-dominant hand is the hand you keep closer to the heart, and the dominant hand is the hand you show the world. So in my case, my left hand I write left-handed, so that's the hand I show the world. So lines and markings in the hand that is the non-dominant hand are often related to our closer personal relationships. There are lines in the hands that we call opportunity lines, also known as another effing growth opportunity. And those are places where we can see where we might have rage or anger or sadness or some sort of trapped emotion. And as a result of that, we are able to identify, and this is part of where my healing work picks up. Somebody can tell me that they're having trouble with relationships, and then I can discover that they are actually having an intimacy attack, which is caused by suppression of rage, anger, or anxiety or something that needs to be exercised out of their body. And a lot of times, I mean, like literally some of the unconventional things that I give my clients to do, but just from looking at the hands, I've had people that I've like go to Goodwill and buy $20 worth of fine china and break it into a million pieces and see what kind of emoting needs to happen, because the palms of the hands change. They change based on the neurology in the brain. And that is why, as hand analysts, as scientific hand analysts, we are actually able to get into the forensics of the inner psyche. And I use that then, of course, to do transformational work, because if you stand there and you say, no, I feel fine, I'm fine about that, I broke up with my ex-husband and I'm fine. And meanwhile, I'm seeing rage and anger, then I know that you need to do the work there. So there's so much that's in your hands that tells us how and what needs to shift in the transformation process. The other thing is, so I'll show you notice that my Lifeline, it has almost like I got a break in it. I've had a near-death experience and significant childhood trauma, and other people that I have read and done readings on that have like almost a double lifeline oftentimes have had like volume 1 and volume 2. They didn't just have a life, they've had a couple of lives. Some people have even had 3 or 4 lifelines that are secondary on the inside of the lifeline. So we're able to see a lot. And here's a fun one. Everybody that, if you hold your hand up and just natural position, notice the thumb from the pointer finger. This one is called the angle of opposition. Angle of opposition, this is my natural resting position of my hands. I have a very outside the box way of thinking. If you tend to have a closer natural resting position of your thumb to your pointer finger, you're usually easier to tell what to do, or you might actually take advice from people. As you can see, I don't take advice well. So even if you look at your kids and you're like, oh, I'm trying to give this piece of advice over to them, but meanwhile they have hands like this, you say, how would you like to change it around? Instead of telling them what to do, ask them what they need. And this is part of where the really awesome thing is that when you know about your gifts and you know about your hands, then you know about the inner psyche and working, considering that 95% of what runs you isn't even conscious to you. And the hand analysis, therefore, allows us not only to look at the highest possible frequency and vibration of your energy, but it also looks at the different ways to actually make those life purpose choices in the easiest way possible. You also have a life school. Everyone is in at least one life school, and there are 4 life schools. There is a School of Love, which is the most popular. There is the School of Peace. So School of Love is about the mastery of self-love. There is the School of Peace, which is about peace versus panic. People that are peace versus panic tend to do really good with having Band-Aids in their purses, or they know they're actuaries. I had somebody that was School of Peace, and I said, wow, you really like to calculate, make sure that everything's safe. And they were like, that's funny, you should say that. I'm an actuary. I'm like, of course you are.
Someone who's a prepper, someone who's prepared in a way?
Yes, yes, very prepared, but also they tend to go through life. And so there's always a master path and a student path in life. The master path is you're making it easy, you're taking the easy route, you're doing what's good, what's supportive, and what's in your highest and best interest. The student path is, as my mentor says, it's like being dragged down the gravel road behind the truck going, when is this, how did I get here? And many of us, every one of us has a master path and a student path, and there is not a single human being as part of the journey. We're not always in the master path, and we're not always in the student path. But the sooner you understand or know what your master path is, when you start taking that exit onto the student path, you go, oh, I'm headed for a student path moment. And each of you, let me just say, so School of Love, school of peace versus panic. Then there's school of service, and that's who to serve and the right people to serve. Those people tend to help people a lot, but if they don't pick the right people, they get used and they're martyrs and things like that. And then there's a school of wisdom, which is only about 10% of the population. They're like the stoic leaders and the really wise owls is how I describe them.
Like the
So
manifest, those are like
so a lot of times I do see a manifestor in a wisdom school. And so we have those, and you can be in more than one school. That just makes life all the more fun. If somebody gets really dramatic life and then they tell me, or I see their hands and they're in 2 schools, I'm like, well, there you go. You're not just trying to figure out self-love, you're also trying to serve everyone. Oh boy. So all of these things together create the science. And again, so I've sort of glanced over this and to say that there's also 18 potential gift markings in your hands. Now, gift markings come and go, and they're sort of like superpower energy. Now, one of the ones that I have is one that's called a star. It's a Mars. Mars is in the entire hand. We also break it down by the planets too. But mine is, I have what's called a courage star. So people will naturally come to you if you have one of these stars, and they're these 6-pointed stars. So you can look at your hand, and without necessarily noting, I just want you to observe whether you have any little stars, 6-pointed stars in various parts of your hand. And those of you who have high psychic abilities and have a lot of intuitive flashes oftentimes have stars over in this part of the hand, which is the moon zone. It's a spiritual zone. And if I see that your fate line, which is the line that says, here's where the money is, if your fate line is anchored over in the moon zone, then I'm able to see and sense that a lot of times your money might be sitting and doing some sort of spiritual work, versus if your fate line is coming out of or associated to a conjunction to your communication line, then it might mean that you actually would make a lot of money by writing or speaking. So there's a lot of different things that we see just off of a simple handprint. And I love this work for the reason that when you have a stronger command of yourself, when things happen, like invaders come into the room in a Zoom session, or somebody decides to come spam your Facebook page and tell you you don't know who you are or what you're talking about, or you are hit with a financial crisis, or something happens to your health, when all of these different interferences show up in your life, if you have the capacity to know who you truly are, then you have an extra tool in your toolkit to navigate powerfully into the space of choosing what is in your highest and best interest without as much fear and concern of what other people think and what other people approve of, and what your mom said was true or not true about you, and what your significant other thinks of you, and what the planet thinks of you. Because when you do that, you then are in relationship with the universe in an entirely different way. And it's from the space of unconditional love, because you recognize that you are a reflection of that unconditional love back into the world. And it is through your unique design that it becomes lived out through everything that you do in your life. So that's my thing. So I know I have like 2 minutes, I guess. So I'm going to be over in room 14.
Let me just interrupt for a
Okay.
second. I'm waiting to see if my next speaker is here. If not, then you can continue.
Okay.
So let's just continue. I find out that she's arrived and she's on standby. So let's keep going for now.
Okay. All right. Well, so I will be over in room 14. You can come over and see me. I'm giving away a little 20-minute reading, which is a $97 value, but you do have to come over and see me in the room. And I'm going to steal Roy's idea because I like the way he did that. I'll give you a code, and at some point before I leave, which will be at 4:30, I think it is Eastern time, I will drop back over and say who won. But or you can book a session with me. I know that you got those links. And so at this point, I guess.
Actually,
I'll just open.
We do have somebody, I'm sorry, I mixed up my schedule. We have Madam Z who's coming up next.
Okay.
I have my 2 M's, my Michelle, my Megha, and my Madam. My 3, I'm just like little dyslexic here. All my M's, Michelle, Madam, Z, and Megha, all one in a row. So sorry about that. We do have Madam Z
Okay.
ready to go. So if you just want to close out and let them know how to find you and how to access your freebies, you can also come back later and you can also do your giveaway online through this. Okay. And anybody have any quick questions before we close out with Megha? Isn't she amazing, everybody? Bravo. You can listen to her all day. She's such a source of information.